G'day and welcome to this week's episode of Hooked on Sport. Summer sport is underway and it's time to hear what's making sporting news around Adelaide and beyond. Ben Hook, SA's local sport expert, is here to share the most remarkable sporting stories of the week. G'day, Hookie.
Wallace, good morning. Great to chat.
Now, before we get started, I hear you participated in the Adelaide Softball Celebrity All-Star Game last Wednesday. One question, how's your body?
Your spies are good. Yes, I did play amongst a bevy of proper celebrities. I was invited to participate in the Adelaide Softball Association's season opener, which was a celebrity softball game, slow pitch softball with quite soft balls, to be honest. There's a couple of decent ball players amongst them. So Selena Bushell, an Olympian 2000 in Sydney, Darren Fidge, Adelaide Giants, Jordan McArdle, captain of the Adelaide Giants now. So in amongst the rest of us, there was some genuine rabble, and I led the rabble crowd. It was good fun. It was probably went for about 3/4 of an hour. Some genuine stars of Australian sport: Juliet Haslam, Rachel Spawn, Peter Squire, Matthew Cowdery, of course, the Paralympic champion swimmer, Travis Marnie, an Olympic swimmer as well, Matt Glaetzer, cyclist, who we've talked about on this program, of course. So, yeah, lots of fun. Can I just give you one little humble brag, please, Wallace?
Go for it.
I did score the only home run of the game. It was an infield home run, but you still got to run the bases. And of course, I ran the bases and did a hamstring the second time around when I was running for someone else. So, yes, I didn't pull up as well as when I started, but best part of a week on, I've recovered pretty well. Good fun, great day. Well done to Adelaide Softball Association. I got a lovely letter from their president last night, who I will respond to today. But it seemed like it had really great feedback. So, hopefully it's a good little kickoff. What I reckon is a really excellent little local competition.
Yeah, it's a terrific start to the season. I think we've got a lot of summer seasons underway this last weekend. Now, you've had a big rap on this young South Australian golfer, and he's just won his first professional tournament.
Jack Buchanan, his name, Wallace. He's only been a pro for around about 12 months. He learnt the game at Flagstaff Hill Golf Club, moved to Glenelg Golf Club, and that's traditionally what happens to top-end young amateurs. They move from Tier 2 to Tier 1 clubs. So congratulations to both clubs on what they've been able to generate. He was a star of Simpson Cup. He captained South Australia during his amateur career. But my word, Wallace, a huge step to jumping up to winning as a pro. So he took out the Western Australian PGA last weekend. He didn't have it all his own way. He bogeyed the final hole where he only needed a par to win. That put him back into a playoff that went 2 holes. He birdied it both times, and the second birdie was enough for him to hang on and clinch the title. So I'm really pleased for him. It means a lot, actually. It means it's only early in the golf season, the Australian Tour golf season, but it means he goes to 1 on the order of merit. It guarantees him a start in the Australian PGA and the Australian Open, which come up in around about a month's time, the PGA, and then another week after that, the Australian Open. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because if you're guaranteed starts in those events, and you can have a big Australian Open, if you get hot on the right week, suddenly, top 3, top 5, and that can get him a berth in an Open Championship. And then, of course, if you play well in an Open Championship, you start to get exemptions into a whole lot of other events. So, yeah, it means a lot. It's only one step on a pretty long stepping stone for a professional golfer to get to a place like the US Tour or the European Tour. But he's well on the way now, Jack. So, really pleased for him, and he's got all of the game, and it's just a matter of making sure you play well at the right time. The Western Australian PGA, Wallace, is an interesting event. It's been a very, very successful hunting ground for South Australian golfers in times gone past. Jason Norris, who spent a lot of time at the Grange Golf Club, has won it. Adam Bland, who some people may know, has won it. But I'll give you a couple of other bigger names. Brian Crafter won it 3 times in a row in the mid-50s. Bob Toohey, bit of a legend of South Australian golf here, member of the Golf SA Hall of Fame, has won it, I think, back in 1960, so 64 years ago. And Stephen Leaney, who was a West Australian at the time, but now one of us here in South Australia, plays his golf at Royal Adelaide, has won it as well. So, yeah, well done to Jack Buchanan. He has certainly flipped my thoughts on what were the biggest highlights of South Australian golf this year. It's the SA Golf Awards next Saturday night, which I'm involved in, and I didn't have Jack in my top 5, but now I'm going to have to rethink it.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, I did watch a bit of it. And gee, Kalgoorlie, you're off the fairway and it's complete dirt. And yeah, he putted so well.
Yeah, it is absolutely. It's nicknamed the Tournament in the Desert. Kalgoorlie's hosted it for a number of years. You may have heard of Ebony Hurd, who's now known as Ebony Riordan. Now, she was a star amateur at Kooyonga Golf Club and actually took a job working in the mines at Kalgoorlie and was one of I think the only woman ever to play in the Western Australian PGA out of Kalgoorlie, played in that tournament off the men's tees, and I reckon made a cut. She actually works a little bit at Royal Adelaide these days. So, yeah, interesting tournament, been around for a long time, sort of in the middle of nowhere, of course, Kalgoorlie, wonderful mining town, not exactly known for its golf, but it's got a great golf course there. And, yeah, Jack Buchanan will arrive there next year as the reigning champ.
Now, Hookie, moving on to basketball, we've got a legend who has a new goal in mind.
Some people will have heard of Sam Woosnam, who grew up in country New South Wales, I think, but moved to Adelaide as a kid and became one of the stars of South Australian basketball. Instrumental in that really successful period with the Adelaide Lightning. I reckon she might have played in 2 or 3 championships for the Adelaide Lightning, and at least one of them as a captain. A dual Lightning championship player is what I've got in my notes here. So she's gone on to coach in the NBL 1. So NBL 1 is like state leagues, if anyone's sort of understanding how that works. So if you work on the theory that in South Australia, it's NBL 1 Central, so that's North Adelaide, West Adelaide, Sturt, Central District, all of those sorts of clubs. Well, she's been coaching NBL 1 women in NBL South, so that's essentially around the Victorian area, and she's coached Kilsyth Cobras to 3 championships in the Women's League. Well, in the last 2 years, she's gone on to coach Dandenong Rangers in the men's competition. They finished 5th this year, played finals, so it's quite the progression that Sam Woosnam has made as a coach. She's just been appointed as assistant coach to Adam Ford at the Cairns Taipans in NBL, and I would probably contend is maybe 5 years away from making that incredible step of becoming the first woman to coach a men's team in the NBL. We see men all the time coaching in the WNBL, the women's competition, but Sam Woosnam, I think, is going to smash through that glass ceiling at some point and coach a men's team at the elite professional basketball level here in Australia. And she's one of us, mate, straight out of the West Adelaide Bearcats Basketball Club. Really, really exciting to see her future now that she's officially an assistant coach at the Taipans.
Now, you've identified a lefty cricketer who you're seeing as the next big thing.
Yeah, one after my own. Left-hand bowler, left-hand bat. Her name's Eleanor Larosa. She plays for the Glenelg Cricket Club. She took a contract with what was then known as the SA Scorpions last year. They're now the South Australian women's cricket team. She impressed so much, she was picked up by the Adelaide Strikers in the off-season. They're involved in the Spring Challenge now. Their first game, she was player of the match. So on debut, she took 4 wickets for the Adelaide Strikers in her first ever official T20 game. She scored 2 50s as well in list A cricket. She's only very young. I think she still might be a teenager, maybe just turned 20. But Eleanor Larosa, I always like to pick out someone that I reckon we're going to see big things from in the future, and that's a name that I reckon everyone just needs to keep in the back of their minds. Eleanor Larosa is going to be a star cricketer in the next 4 or 5 years, undoubtedly heading towards playing for Australia, who are doing wonderful things themselves right now in the Middle East as they're made their way through to the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup.
Now, Hookie, age sometimes is a barrier, but not for this star.
Age shall not weary them, my man. Yes, so Sherilyn Cass is playing her second year in Hockey 1, and you probably think, oh, well, if she's experienced, she must have played more than a second year of Hockey 1. Well, that's not actually the case. In fact, she's known as Shorty, and she last played National League before she returned to the competition last year. She last played in 2010. Wonderful story. She started a family young and really just decided to keep playing club level hockey, but invest in raising her 2 young girls. And last year, with her girls 12 and 10, their names are Lila and Piper, she decided to return to playing at National League for the first time in 13 years and represented the Adelaide Fire in the Hockey 1 competition, having previously played for what was known as the Adelaide Suns in the National Hockey League, which is, of course, now defunct. In and amongst all of that, she's played 350 club games. So it wasn't like she was just biding her time, but to go 13 years without playing at the National League level and step back into it, and with a genuine modicum of success as well is quite incredible. On Friday night, they played Melbourne. They went down 1-0. Sorry, they didn't go down 1-0. They went down 1-1, but then it went to like a one-on-one shoot-off, and that's where Adelaide lost the game. But the sole goal was scored by Sherilyn Cass, Shorty Cass, who it was the first goal that she had scored since her return. So it was a wonderful goal as well. Got a hard pass into the circle from Margot van Geffen, the Dutch international that we were only talking about last week, and this brilliant little reflex deflection into the goal. So Shorty Cass, she is back, and I guarantee you that when she scored that goal, her two daughters, Lila, now 13, and Piper, now 11, would have been cheering from the top of the stands.
Oh,
good on her and good on the Fire.
Yeah, that's so good. Great story. Now, Ben, we turn to baseball, and I'm wondering, will Adelaide be turning into Tiger Town?
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on in local baseball and how that relates to the Tigers. I'm talking about the Detroit Tigers in the USA's Major League. They have taken on not one, but two young South Australians on their extended roster. So they took on Jack Bushell at the start of the year. I mentioned Selena Bushell just before. Well, this is Selena's son, Jack. Selena, an Olympian at Sydney Games in 2000, playing softball. Her husband is James Bushell, who was a very, very good player for the Adelaide Giants. And their son, Jack, wonderful pitcher, performed miracles for Australia in the under-18 World Baseball Challenge, I think it might be called. So Jack, a really exciting player, signed to the Tigers. Well, last week, Ali Tanner, another young South Australian, was signed to the Detroit Tigers as well. Ali's father is actually a former Sturt League footballer. His name's Sean Tanner. So Ali Tanner and Jack Bushell, both with the Detroit Tigers. I don't know about you, mate. Do you have a Major League team?
Yankees.
Mark Hutton once famously was a starting pitcher for the Yankees, another Sturt legend that you would well know. So you can understand you're following the Yankees, but my new team, 100%, mate, Detroit Tigers, if they keep taking South Australians on like that, they're going to be irresistible to watch.
Now, last week's Sheffield Shield game saw South Australia come up with a gritty draw against New South Wales. You've identified a hidden talent from that game.
No, you're spot on, mate. So Alex Carey and Nathan McSweeney were the talk of the town. Both got really important hundreds for South Australia when they had to fight for a draw on the last day. But I reckon Daniel Drew was the hidden highlight from last week's Sheffield Shield game. So McSweeney and Carey put on, I reckon something like about 195. And then Carey fell over. There was still a couple of hours of cricket to play. Drew came in at number 7 because there was a night watchman, Nathan McAndrew, batted at number 3, I think it was. Daniel Drew came in at number 7, scored 46 not out of 141 balls. It doesn't sound like a heck of a lot. It does sound like the sting might have gone out the game towards the end of it, but that was such an important knock coming in, always very difficult after a really big partnership, and whether it's the other partner who falls or someone comes in and gets knocked over pretty quickly. So he played a pretty critical knock there, did Drewy, and he backed it up on Sunday by scoring 100 in the club competition, the one-day cup here in the Premier League competition, plays for West Torrens. He had a previous 12 months to really forget, Wallace. He was out of the side at the start of last year, probably a little bit unlucky to be so, but didn't have amazing form in the club competition, then suffered a really devastating personal tragedy. I won't go into the detail of it. It wasn't his own mental health or anything like that, but someone very close to him passed away tragically. So that was a huge obstacle to overcome, and it really feels like that he has. He scored a ton in the second 11 before the Sheffield Shield season started, then played that really critical knock in the Sheffield Shield game, and to come back and score another ton for West Torrens. I feel like he is really back in that clear headspace you need to be to perform at elite sport level. They've got Queensland in a week. They've got a 4-day game and a 1-day game. I expect he'll be in both of those teams. And if he can get some more big runs, he just suddenly becomes a bit of a smoky to maybe represent Australia in a white ball game and maybe even a test match in 2 or 3 years' time. So I'm really pleased for Daniel Drew returning to form at the top level.
Now, Hookie, for me, this is a first in sport. When a player's number or Guernsey is retired, my understanding it's retired. You've got a story where one has become unretired.
Yeah. It's really cool, actually. Walkerville Softball Club. We've touched a little bit on softball because I played in a softball game last week, and I don't play anywhere as near as well as the two names I'm about to mention. Linda Martin, absolute legend of the sport here in South Australia. She played all her career for Walkerville Softball Club, and her number 8 jersey was retired and had been hung in their club rooms ever since. And they made the decision to unretire that jersey, obviously with Linda's approval. And Linda presented it to one of the stars of South Australian softball, Chelsea Robinson. Chelsea was part of the Aussie Spirit ahead of the 2021 Tokyo Games. So she's been an absolute jet for a long period of time. She's back playing for Walkerville now. And after 26 years, they decided to unretire Linda Martin's jersey and present it to Chelsea Robinson. So she played in it for the first time last week. They took on the Hills. I just think it's a wonderful story that someone's history, yes, the jersey's been unretired, but it's absolutely being cherished and honoured by the Walkerville Softball Club. And I know Chelsea Robinson is going to wear number 8 with pride for many, many more years to come in recognition of one of the all-time great pioneers of South Australian softball, Linda Martin.
To wrap up the footy season, you've got one final great story.
Yeah, Shane Ploenges is a name that maybe not many people will know. I've had a bit to do with Shane just solely because I used to follow the story of the Nangwarry Football Club. And when I was doing a bit of work with the ABC and my good mate Jules Schiller, we had Shane Ploenges on a show that we would do on Saturday. He's been the president of Nangwarry for 26 years, and he was actually honoured with the SANFL's Community Football Volunteer of the Year. So this goes absolutely statewide. Nangwarry is a very, very little town in the Mid-South-East, plays in the Mid-South-East League. So if you're heading towards Bordertown on a drive to Victoria, Wallace, as I think you might be doing very shortly, then you will get an understanding of where Nangwarry is. But if you blink and you're going to miss it, bit of a logging town, I reckon you'll find, but yeah, very, very little place. And they have been, let's just say, starved of success in football. In actual fact, Wallace, they are the most losingest, if I can use that word, losingest team since I've been following sport around the South Australian community. They want a run of 104 straight losses in 8 seasons. Oh, wow. Can you believe that? Imagine going 8 years without winning a game of football. But Shane Ploenges has stuck fat with this club all the way through. It wasn't just 104 games and 8 seasons of straight losing that would have worn someone down. I think it was in 2019, the clubhouse burnt down. They had a fire and the whole clubhouse was destroyed. They had to rebuild it. You think how many clubs in the country could have just shrugged their shoulders and said, okay, time to merge and let's merge with another one of the little towns down there. There's Hatherley. I'm not even sure who they're close to be honest, but there's a really rich mid-southeast competition, and they could have been one of the first dominoes to fall as they're trying to rationalise that whole area with football, but not Nangwarry and not Shane Ploenges. And I reckon it was in 2021, they finally recorded their first win, and the celebrations that went on at that club, the Nangwarry Saints, was unbelievable. So Shane Ploenges, the SANFL Volunteer of the Year, richly deserved for his 26 years just fighting the good fight with the tiny little Nangwarry Saints Footy Club.
Great chat, Hookie. See you next week.
Yeah, we will do. I'll have a special episode next week. I'll be catching up with a good mate of mine, Bevan Jones, who's run his own very successful podcast. And we're just going to go back and forth a bit. I might share a few of my thoughts. He might share a bit of his. I know you're away for a week. Well-earned holiday, mate. So enjoy your trip away. Can I just share with you one little story before we wrap this one up?
Go for it.
I was involved in the Australian Olympians Association dinner on Saturday night. Very intimate affair. Essentially, it is Olympians of games past who convene to welcome home the Olympians of the 2024 games. Not everyone attends, of course, only around about 70, 75 people. I was very lucky to score what I would class as an exclusive invite. I was involved as MC for the function, but I really was just a bit of a fly on the wall in and amongst all these absolute legends of Australian sport. I've mentioned a couple already that I played in a softball game with. Matthew Glaetzer was there. Rachel Spawn was there. Juliet Haslam were there. But there are some other absolute champions of sport as well. Mark Hutton, as I was talking about. But there was just a couple that were there that I just thought were worth identifying, that these guys are still involved in their feats, even though they were many, many years ago, just still are worth acknowledging. So Bruce Frayne was a a sprinter for Australia in the early 80s out of South Australia. He ran at the LA Games in 1984. He was part of the 4x400 team. They finished fourth. And I think it was Rick Mitchell who was just run down in the straight by the Nigerians. It was won by the Americans, of course, but the Nigerians just pipped us for third. Australia ran 2:59.70. Bruce Frayne, Rick Mitchell, Darren Clark, Gary Minigan. That team 40 years ago still holds the Australian record for the 4x400. You think about the advancements in sport with tracks and shoes and training and all of those sorts of things, and those guys still hold the Australian record for the 4x400. The other one I wanted to identify was Leon Gregory, who was there on the night and got a special cheer when I introduced each of the Olympians and where they had competed. Leon Gregory competed with David Leon, Graham Gibson, and Kevin Gosper. Kevin Gosper's a name that people may be familiar with, a vice president of the IOC. They also ran in the 4x400 metres relay, but they ran at Melbourne in 1956. And Leon Gregory still getting around and still supporting the current day Olympians as an Olympian himself. They won a silver medal. The first Australian men's athletics relay team to win a medal at the Olympics was back in Melbourne, 1956. And Leon Gregory still getting around, a local in Adelaide and supporting all the present-day athletes. Just two wonderful stories. So Bruce Frayne, Leon Gregory, they're just two that I wanted to take away and share with our listeners.
Thanks, Hookie. Look forward to that special episode next week.
Good on you, mate. Take care.
Another episode of Hooked on Sport in the bag. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you enjoy the podcast, let your mates know. Just search Hooked on Sport to find us. And if you've got a local sporting story to share with Ben, send us a message via our socials or by email, hookedonsportpodcast@gmail.com. Hooked on Sport is produced by Wallace Long at C2M and music by Ben Watson at Zest Entertainment.